Hey everyone, this is Mario with Blue Oak Bushcraft. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to restore and reseason a cast iron, well this is a pot, but a cast iron pan or a Dutch oven you can do this with as well. You can find these for basically scrap prices at like a flea market, a thrift shop, a secondhand shop, an antique shop, or even a scrapyard sometimes when they're in this rough condition. And so, because a lot of people just pass them over, but you can get a few more generations of life out of something like this. So I'm going to show you today how to restore it and get it back into working order. It's a real simple process. All we're going to do is we're going to scour this down to the raw cast iron. So we're going to use our steel wool and soap here, our SOS pads. And I apologize if the paint's coming over top of me, but we're going to use these. We're just going to scrape it all down in our bucket of water, get rid of all the rust, all of the old seasoning that's still on there. Once we have it scraped down, it's going to look kind of gray almost with some little divots in it. Probably that's not a big deal. But once we get it to that point, we're going to take it inside. We're going to coat it in a nice layer of olive oil, and then we're going to bake it in the oven. And that's what's going to season our pan, which is going to allow it to be almost non-stick and keep it from rusting up like this again. So stay with me, we're going to get started. All right, so first things first, we're going to take one of our SOS pads, our bucket of water over here, and we're just going to scrub it down. And this can be a long process depending on how old it is and how much rough shape it's in, but just take your time with it, go slow, get the soap on there, that'll help get the rust off too. Dip it in the water, and again, if there's any seasoning left on the pan or the pot, you don't want to leave that on because it's not going to let the new season take hold, so you really want to focus on getting that scrubbed off as well. And you don't need to go too hard either. Like it will come off even if it doesn't look like it at first. You just basically gotta do circular strokes and have some patience and just keep going until you start to see that gray cast iron, which is gonna be what we're looking for to move on to our next step. Now this can take a little while, so I'm not going to make you guys sit here and watch me scrub a pot for what could be 45 minutes. So I will finish on this and I'll bring you back when we're ready to move on to our next step. Alright, so we've been scrubbing for about 20 minutes. And as you can see, we've pretty much gotten off all of the rust. There may be a little bit deep in the dimples, but I just season over top of it. It's not a huge deal. What you just want to do is get it down to that actual raw cast iron layer, and it'll have like a grayish black look, and you can feel it too. It just feels different. So now that we've gotten it down to this, we're going to go on inside. We're going to paint it with our olive oil, and we're going to put it in the oven, and we'll begin our seasoning process. So stay tuned. All right, so now that we got all that done, we're going to get the olive oil on our cast iron pot here. So we're just going to take any sort of olive oil, vegetable oil, canola oil will work, but I prefer the olive oil. Just take a paper towel, fold it over a few times, get some olive oil on it. And you don't want a ton for this, you want to kind of let it soak in to the paper towel. And I poured out a little too much, but that's not a big deal. I'll just pour it out in there so I can rub it in a moment. But what you're going to do is you're just going to give it a nice even coat over the whole pot, and try to make sure if you're doing this bare-handed that you're not removing any of the olive oil you put on with your fingers. And be careful, because these are pretty heavy and covered in oil. It's pretty slippery, so you don't want to drop it on your foot or something, but yeah, just want to really rub that in, give it a nice all over even coat. Get all the cracks and corners and the handle and the back and the bottom. And once you finish with this, you're gonna have your oven preheat to 350 degrees. And my oven kind of sucks, to be honest. So I usually have to do this a little longer than most people because I'm pretty sure it doesn't actually get to 350. But the concept is around 350 for an hour to an hour and a half. Now, I'll probably do mine at 400 for 2 hours, but again, that's just because my oven is not great. So, yeah, that's just a quick explanation as to why I would do that. But I'm going to try the 350 for about 2 hours and see where we are. You can always add more oil and then again do this. Like, just keep repeating the process until you build up the layer of season that you want on your cast iron pot. You don't want it to be sticky, but that's generally because you put too much oil on at once. So just thin coats. If you have to repeat 2 or 3 times, it's not a big deal. Just don't try to put a ton on there at once because it's not going to season properly. You want it to really absorb into the actual iron, and that's how you're going to get a good seasoning. So I'm going to put this in the oven, and I'll set the timer, and then we will wait. An important thing too, make sure you have some sort of pan or aluminum skillet or not aluminum skillet, aluminum pan or aluminum foil underneath your cast iron pot while you're doing this so that the oil doesn't leak all over in your oven. But I'm going to let mine sit for 2 hours. I'll bring you guys back, show you where we are, and we'll decide if we need another coat. Alright, so it's the next day. It got a little too late for me to film the other night, but I pulled this out. I let it cool down overnight, and you can see we have a much more uniform black color to the entire pot, and you can't feel the dimples and divots of the raw cast iron anymore. Now, again, like I said, my oven's not the best, so I usually have to go through 1 or 2 times to get a proper seasoning on it, and then I'll cook with it a few times, and that will really finish in that seasoning. So I'm actually gonna put 1 more coat of olive oil on this and run it through 1, maybe 2 more times, and I'll bring you back for the final product. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. So we are at the end stage here. We have finished the seasoning, and we have gotten our cast iron piece completely restored. It's got a nice dark sheen around the entire piece, a nice deep dark brown or black color. You know, nothing crazy. My oven takes a little longer because it's not the best, but probably in all 7-8 hour investment. I didn't pay anything for it, so you really can't beat that. I mean, that thing will last forever if you take care of it. And to just recap the steps that we took to go from what I would call a restoration to a reseasoning, I found it. It had rust and seasoning on it, some other just gunk and just random things dried on from laying in the mud. So I let it soak in a tub of water for about a month. That seasoning can be pretty tough to get off sometimes. I had to let it rust. I would steel wool, let it rust, steel wool, let it rust, steel wool. Finally, when I got all of that seasoning off, I let it totally rust, and that's where I brought you guys in here in the video. Then I steel wooled the entire thing 1 more time, got it all off, cleaned it off with water, brought it in here, got my olive oil, did 1 thin coat, and then I left it in here at 350 for 2 hours, and then I did 2 more coats, and we got our final product. So thanks for sticking with me. Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Comment any videos you might want to see in the future. Subscribe for more content. And as always, have a great day.